All right, well, welcome everyone. We're very pleased to have all of you joining us today for this presentation on the new Center for Dreamers. My name is Lynn Silverman, and I'm the co-chair of Temple Beth El's Immigrant and Refugee Rights Action Team, along with Erica Serlin, who unfortunately is ill today, so she won't be joining us. But she was instrumental in getting this all together, along with Rabbi Bonnie and Freddie Bove. So after the presentation, our presenters will also give us an update on recent immigration policy changes and challenges. We'll have some time for questions and answers. And after all of that, Rabbi Bonnie will lead us in a discussion to brainstorm ideas for future education and action steps. And just as a note, today's presentation is being co-hosted by the Dane Sanctuary Coalition. So in terms of our presenters, we're very excited to have both of them with us today. Erica Rosales is the director of the new Center for Dreamers at UW-Madison. Erica herself is an undocumented immigrant and a Daca recipient. She is a first-generation college graduate and received her graduate degree from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee from the Cultural Foundations of Community Engagement and Education program. She has done recent work at the Global Health Institute as a human rights curriculum coordinator, focusing on migration, child health, and human rights. She also currently works at the Wisconsin Center for Education Research as a diversity and inclusion specialist. Additionally, Erica is a 4W Director of Immigration and Human Rights. Erica has been an immigration activist and has helped organize immigration events and rallies locally and nationally. She has been a guest lecturer and has written published pieces on immigration and DACA. Erin Barbato is the director of the Immigrant Justice Clinic at the University of Wisconsin Law School. She teaches second and third year law students to represent individuals in removal proceedings and with humanitarian-based immigration relief. The work often involves representing people seeking refuge in the United States. Previously, Erin worked as an immigration attorney at a nonprofit and in private practice. And Erin has received many honors. She was recognized by the Wisconsin Law Journal in 2010 for her work representing immigrants and pro bono services. In 2014, she was again recognized for her work with immigrants, and she was awarded the Women in the Law in 2014. She has also been a member of Wisconsin Pro Bono Honor Society, and in 2021, the students at the UW Law School awarded her the Clinical Teacher of the Year award. So with all of that, and there's much more I could say about both our presenters, we're very pleased and thrilled really to have them be able to present and talk to us about the new Center for Dreamers, and then again give us a brief update on immigration policy. Afterwards, whether you can raise your hand after all the presentations, and we can call on you, or you can write things in the chat and I can read them when we have the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so glad all of you are here. Thank you for joining us, especially on this very chilly night. I hope everybody is safe and warm tonight. So I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, but Erika is going to help me with the presentation, as for some reason I'm having some technical difficulties with my Zoom. So hopefully this works out. And then Erika will share her story with you and tell you, be really the highlight of this presentation, because she is really the highlight of the center that we have built. So we recently opened the doors. It was a soft start to opening the Center for Dreamers at the University of Wisconsin, and we're housed in the law school on Bascom Hill. There we go. So we are housed within the Immigrant Justice Clinic, which is also housed in the Economic Justice Institute at the University of Wisconsin Law School, which is a large, powerful clinical program where law students in their second and third year are able to learn how to be lawyers in some really incredible clinical programs. The Center for Dreamers is in the law school where the law students are able to represent people in various areas of immigration that have DACA or are undocumented students. So most of the work we do at the clinic is representing people who are seeking asylum, but now with the clinic, we're able to, with the Center for Dreamers, we're able to expand our resources to serve a new, very important population in Wisconsin. This is the background, and I was thinking about this today. It's been a very long time since there's been a movement to have a pathway to citizenship for children who were brought here or came on their own undocumented when they were children. And the advocacy for this effort, really what's called the DREAM Act, started in 2001. And now, almost 21 years later, and we have not been successful in having a pathway to citizenship for this population. What we do have is called DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And you can kind of see a little bit of the timeline on this slide in terms of where it started in 2012, and then we'll talk a little bit about where we are today. But it's been a really bumpy road for people with DACA, and their future still is in limbo and continues to change at certain times due to federal court decisions and also based on who the executive, the president is, because the president has a lot of power over the DACA program. So the DACA eligibility requirements have not changed since President Biden announced through an executive order on June 15th of 2012. People have had to have come to the United States before their 16th birthday, continuously resided in the United States since 2007. So when you look at that number, in 2012, some of the kiddos that were applying were young, but now when we look at people that have DACA, many are very much established in their lives. They have houses, they have families, they have careers, they have education, but they still remain in this deferred action status, which is not a pathway to citizenship and is temporary. But again, they have to have been physically present in the United States when President Obama announced DACA. And some of the additional requirements is that they were currently in school or have graduated or obtained a GED from high school. And then they cannot have any convictions for any felony or any significant misdemeanors or 3 or more other misdemeanors. So the standards are really high. And it's really difficult to qualify for DACA, and it's a limited number of people, but it is a large number of people in an underserved population, especially in Wisconsin. So as I mentioned before, DACA is not a pathway to citizenship. So what is DACA? DACA is a deferral of removal, mostly. It has a few benefits, including people with DACA can have a work permit, employment authorization document. Right now, they're valid for 2 years. Every 2 years, they need to renew that with a cost of around $500 every 2 years to renew. You can obtain a driver's license. You can attend higher education with some very high price tags, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You have a deportation reprieve, meaning you shouldn't have the fear of deportation unless you do something that could make you what's called deportable. And you can obtain a social security card. So in some ways you have a social security number, which can help with bank accounts and building credit and things like that. But again, these are limited benefits and they all have a termination date for people with DACA. The DACA population in Wisconsin has gone down a little bit. We had about 7,000 a few years ago, and right now it's around 6,000. That means that some people have obtained other pathways of citizenship, either through employment or through a family member. And some people have decided not to renew their DACA or have decided to return to their home countries. But about 6,000 people currently in Wisconsin have DACA. And if DACA became, if people became newly eligible to apply for DACA, there would be another 11,000 people in Wisconsin eligible to do that. There was a very limited amount of time under the Biden administration where people who didn't have DACA before could apply, but this summer a federal judge stopped that from occurring. So we're still waiting for this to open up again, because 11,000 people in Wisconsin would be eligible to receive these benefits. So at the Immigrant Justice Clinic, we've worked with a lot of students with DACA and a lot of people in the community with DACA, but definitely my work with Erika really helped inspire me and help us come together to create a center to serve a very unmet need for a very deserving population. You'll hear in a few minutes of Erika's story, and some of this will be illustrated to you in a very powerful manner. But what the Center for Dreamers really hopes to do is ensure equitable access to higher education, as well as legal representation for the DACA community in Wisconsin. And then we want to provide additional resources, including access to higher education, information about financial aid, information about licensing for people with DACA. Can I become a lawyer? Can I become a nurse? Can I become a doctor? And then navigating the out-of-state tuition process for people who are with DACA who want to attend higher education. And so our goals, we have 2 years of funding. We, through a Baldwin grant, a Wisconsin IDEA grant from the Baldwin, and it's limited, but we are building resources and connections at UW and throughout the state to ensure that hopefully these services will continue. But we, at the clinic, we provide direct representation to people for DACA to renew their DACAs, finding ways to increase pathways to citizenship for people through other immigration ways. So if someone with DACA maybe is married to a US citizen, they may be able to be eligible to process to obtain their lawful permanent resident status and eventually citizenship. There's also something called advanced parole, which allows people with DACA to travel abroad and return safely. Without advanced parole, people with DACA cannot travel abroad, even to their home countries, because they will not be able to return. And we're beginning to explore employment-based immigration options for people with DACA, because many of the people we work with are in higher education and have advanced degrees, which may make them eligible to receive a pathway to citizenship through an employer. And then in addition to the legal representation we offer, we are providing holistic services. So financial counseling, educational counseling, career counseling, and social service resources. We're still putting all the pieces together, and we have had a lot of support from the community, but we will continue to need more support as we grow and continue to provide more resources. So at this point, I will turn it over to the highlight of this presentation, to Erika Rosales.
Thank you, Erin. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. I believe I was already introduced, but if you got here a little bit later, my name is Erika Rosales, and I am director at the Center for Dreamers. And I actually also have another position at the university. So I also work 50% at the Wisconsin Center for Education and Research as a diversity and inclusion specialist. So I wanted to tell a little bit about my story, and I wanted to start it off with talking about esperanza. And if you know Spanish, you know that it means hope. And it's actually my mother's name as well. And you will see how I include esperanza into my story here. So I wanted to start out talking about my high school life. So this is my very embarrassing high school transcript. And as you can see, at the bottom, you will see a very embarrassing GPA, which was 1.9. So with a 1.9 graduating GPA, I had concluded during that time that I was unintelligent. And I believe that since I was undocumented and also not smart enough for school, that I really didn't deserve to go to college. So the option of going to college was not in anywhere near my vicinity. I also believe that because my parents worked 2 minimum wage jobs and only basically provided us, with the basics, that school wasn't really important for myself or for my family. And so I realized that because I was undocumented and I had all of these circumstances in my life, that I would most likely not have a chance, even if I tried. So then when the question would come up, I also had no idea what I would even go to college for. That was not really a question. I didn't know if I could become, any type of profession. If I wanted to be a doctor, would I be able to? Or if I wanted to become an international studies major, which is what I wanted to do, would I be able to? Or would I have to study abroad and leave the country, which I know was not an option for me? So while a lot of that was untrue, such as the fact that I was not smart enough to go to college, as you can see with the GPA, going to college as an option was a very far away dream. So I was at Madison College, which I'm very grateful for that institution. During the time, my time there, a couple of things happened. And one of them was a car accident that I had. And the other one was with a car accident, which was, one can say that it was an unfortunate event, but actually looking back, it was a very fortunate event, because I had a lot of realizations that I needed to have during that time. And one of them was that I didn't want life to happen anymore to me, despite my situation. I shattered my knee and broke my ankle with my car accident. But I also gained quite a bit of insight, even at that age, what my life could look like despite those barriers that I had. So although there was no DACA at that point, I decided to apply to UW-Whitewater, which would mean that even back then, and as it is still now, I would have to pay out-of-state tuition. And since I am not allowed to pay or to apply for FAFSA, I would not be able to get loans. So I would have to pay out of pocket. And so out of pocket with out-of-state tuition rates. So I went ahead and did that. And despite the fact that also, in addition to that, knowing that I was fully undocumented, I had no idea what I was going to do with a degree after I graduated. The most logical would be that I would be doing absolutely nothing, because I would have a degree, but nothing to back that up with. I would have no social security number, not even a driver's license or work authorization. But I went ahead and decided to invest in that, because I did have a little bit of money from my settlement. And so I decided to go ahead and use that for that purpose. Even if I had to end up leaving the country, at least I would have my education. So, let me go back. There we go. So, when DACA came around, I was heavily depressed. And as I had a college degree and still working at a very low paying job, I believe I was getting paid $11.25 an hour, doing something completely unrelated to what I had just graduated. And over time, though, with DACA, a lot of us, I believe, I'll just go ahead and generalize that even though DACA does not necessarily, equal being documented or even a pathway to citizenship, it does give us that esperanza, and it doesn't allow us to fly to the full extent of our wingspan, but it does give us the ability to go beyond what we didn't have before. So this is part of that. This is my graduate degree GPA, which shows 3.8, I believe. 3.9, I think I ended up getting once I graduated. So I graduated in 2020 from UW Milwaukee through the Cultural Foundations of Community Engagement and Education program. And that was while I was going full time. And as you can see, getting all A's. And the reason why I wanted to show this is because I had such a skewed way of seeing myself. And I believe that that was hugely in part by the fact that I was undocumented, and I did not believe that I belonged in a classroom in college, or that I did not have the intelligence because I didn't look like, the college students, and that I would not be able to. So why even try? And even though with time I've made a lot of realizations, I know that a lot of those realizations have been because of the barriers that we have had. So, and that's essentially what that possibility means. Is it's a dream. It's a dream filled with hope, and oftentimes that's why they call us dreamers. Although there's some DACA recipients that do refuse that label, only because there are so many other undocumented people that are also dreamers. There's 11 million undocumented folks that don't have access to the things that us DACA recipients do. So the undocumented population is extremely diverse. However, what I think makes DACA recipients unique is that we also share a lot of similarities, and some of them is the shared sacrifices that our parents have made for us, our family have made for us, including just leaving their home country. And because of that, I believe that it's also generalizes that some of us feel the need to make those sacrifices worthwhile. And part of that is, some of us have a job, some of us are parents, some of us don't have a professional degree, and some of us, have to navigate education systems that were essentially not created for us and don't necessarily welcome us in a lot of different ways. And whatever way we take that, we want to make sure that our parents and our families know that it was all worth it, and that those sacrifices have not been in vain. And this is exactly what we want to do at the Center for Dreamers. So we want to provide that, which is essentially hope. And we want students with DACA and undocumented students as well to know that as much as something feels impossible, and I think actually a lot of things feel quite impossible because of there's so many high barriers that we have, such as getting into even just undergrad, and especially if students want to go a little bit higher than that, we want folks to know that they are supposed to be here, and that those dreams are sometimes far-reaching, but that we will find a way, and that we're here for them, especially having my story be a shared story, that folks can know that I know that it's a lonely road, and especially when it comes to terms of education. So unfortunately, I've had to navigate this system, this education system that is completely unfamiliar to me, all on my own. I didn't have tutors in high school. I didn't have a counselor that could help me navigate the system. In undergrad, my advisor did not know that I was undocumented. So, and it was also during a time where I was not open about disclosing my status. Now, obviously, I feel a lot more comfortable, but with that, I wasn't able to get resources because first, I knew that there weren't a whole lot of resources, and then second, because I was afraid of disclosing my status because I didn't know what people could use that for, if they would be willing to support me, or if they were going to use that against me. So again, I had no idea how to even apply for graduate school, or if I could even afford school at the out-of-state tuition rates. But again, that's definitely not my own story. I know that my story is not unique at all. Some people become very impressed, and I believe that there's a lot others out there that are doing the same and have gone through a very, very similar situation than what I've gone through. And that's the intention for the center as well, for us to be that support system for these students across the state to feel that they're being supported in a way that maybe they haven't been able to be supported in the past. And of course, this is not an easy task, but we have a really great start with a lot of wonderful support, including you all. And it is, of course, with the collaboration with the Immigrant Justice Clinic. So these are some of the things. I know that Erin already mentioned a little bit of an overview about what we're hoping to support students with. So first is the immigration aspect, which is the consultations through the Immigrant Justice Clinic for anything related to DACA, and then also referrals to social and mental services for DACA and undocumented students, and then also statewide career and education counseling and services for students. And just to go a little bit deeper on that, then providing those services holistically. And essentially, at the core of this is being a place where people feel welcome, a place where people feel supported, and where they have a community where in the past probably has not been there. And similar to what I just mentioned, I believe that it's important for folks to know that that they have incredible potential, even though they've been told otherwise, that we want to embrace them as a whole human, because of course that is who they are. And that we believe that there's healing and breaking barriers and opening up doors for ourselves as well as others. And we believe in community, because stronger, of course, we fight together and we become stronger. And we believe in healing, and doing this type of work is very healing. Coming out of the shadows, as they call it, is extremely healing. I know that it has been for me, but it has not been an easy journey. And so we want to be able to provide that type of support for students. And we definitely can't do this alone. We've had a lot of really amazing support. We've had support from different community members. I believe I saw Fabiola here from the Immigration Affairs Office, and Fabiola and her staff have been incredibly supportive, as well as other organizations. And even though our work is just starting, we've been essentially doing this since just October. It feels like we've already accomplished quite a bit because of the connections that we have made with other organizations, as well as the support that we have been able to provide to students, and also what we'll be providing. Something that I didn't mention on here, and I'll go back to this because it's more about community. It's this is being led by community members, so it will most likely be housed under the Center for Dreamers, but definitely it's being led by community members of here in Madison. And we're planning to create a program for DACA recipients, not just students, but also DACA recipients that are able to apply for advanced parole. So this program essentially would be to create a program where students can travel abroad, and in this case, it would be to Mexico. So DACA recipients of Mexican origin, and they would be assisting as part of the program. So they would be taking courses. It's essentially more like a program at the university in Mexico City. And as part of the program, they would also be able to visit their family members. So with advanced parole, you're granted permission to essentially leave the United States but only under certain circumstances. And one of them is for educational purposes, and then another one could also be for work-related purposes, or if you have a family member. With the family members, it gets a little tricky because it's usually for something that is super unpleasant, like a close family member that is dying, or a parent or a sibling or child or a grandparent that has passed away or is near death. With this, it would be under educational purposes, but we would also take advantage of that program for DACA recipients to also be able to visit their family. A lot of DACA recipients have not been home since they left. I have been very fortunate to have taken advantage of the advanced parole program myself. And I visited my dad this past year, and I was there in Mexico for over a month, which was extremely intense, very nerve-wracking, and also extremely beautiful. And that's why we want to be able to create this, because we know the impact that it has had for us. And we know what it can do for other DACA recipients, especially if it's in a group and they're being supported, and if they're being supported by an institution or different institutions where they feel that it's something that they have to put aside their nervousness about not being able to get back into the country or not being able to do the process. And we would also support with the support of the Immigrant Justice Clinic, the application for the advanced parole. So more to come on that, but we're still trying to see how we can make that work. We're hoping to fund this fully for the DACA recipients. So that would mean, for them to be able to apply for advanced parole and get their ticket, and then also the program at the university in Mexico. We're hoping that this is something that we can do some fundraising on and get this fully supported for those participants. And then, as Aaron mentioned, we have been doing the legal clinics with the support of the Immigrant Justice Clinic. And we have, and I can send out actually these flyers through a PDF if you all are able to share them with anybody that might be able to use these services. So we're going to continue to be having the legal clinics that are open to anybody in the state of Wisconsin, and we're trying to make it as accessible as possible. So usually what we're doing is over the phone consultations through different dates, and then we also provide the services for free and in Spanish or English. And I think that is it. And I have our contact information. I know that I sent my email as well. And if you all want, I can send my personal email, and I'd love to hear from you all. And I know that we're going to have time for Q&A. So I would welcome any questions. As you can see, I'm not very shy about talking about my personal story. So I welcome any questions that you all might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica and Aaron. That's wonderful, wonderful presentation. If people have questions, feel free to just raise your hands or just write something in the chat, and I'll read what you've written in the chat if you prefer.
I think I'm just going to add one thing before we go to questions. Hopefully it's helpful and interesting. But one reason we're really talking about this advanced parole program is that we, when we were writing the grant, the goal was to be able to help as many people with DACA have a pathway to citizenship. And we had a lot of hope that the Biden administration would be able to have Congress pass legislation that would put this into effect. So we thought we would possibly be helping 7,000 people or more if the 11,000 additional people would be eligible. But just to have as many people possible have this pathway to citizenship and really have a future here in the United States without worrying about all the noise and the fear that they have to do on the regular basis. But what we stand with today is we don't have that legislation. And the only pathway to citizenship that people have with DACA is through a different route. And oftentimes that's through a family member or through an employment-based application. So a company, maybe they work for, let's say for Epic, and Epic is like, they're the best computer program. I don't know, I shouldn't talk about this because I don't know what the real jobs are, but someone like computer programming. And so Epic is like, I want to sponsor them. But if they had entered the United States without inspection, so across the border without being admitted, they're not going to be eligible to get that employment-based visa. But if they travel on advanced parole back to their home country and then re-enter on advanced parole, they have what's called a lawful entry that may make them eligible to have a pathway to citizenship either through employment or family here in the United States. So one reason we're kind of focusing on this new option is because it's kind of what we're left with. And it's not what we hoped for the people we're serving or for Erika herself, but it's one way to continue to build options for people, because our goal is really to have people have access to pathways to citizenship in any way that we can do that within our capacity, within the laws, obviously. So I hope that context helps, because it's really intricate and confusing, and but that's kind of what our goal is and what we're always trying to do, to ensure that people have access to education, equity in that process, obtain their degrees and meet their dreams. But in order to fulfill so much of that, it's going to need to be a pathway to citizenship, and not having people forced to live in this limbo of applying to renew their status every 2 years and being at the power of the executive, because we know what that looked like 4 years ago, and we know what it looks like today, where it doesn't seem like we can get anything going, even though Biden had made the promises that we would have that pathway to citizenship. So I could go on and on. I won't. I'll stop there. But I just wanted to provide that context. And I also wanted to say none of this would be possible without Marsha Mansfield, who is here, because she taught me from day one when I worked with her to go after it, and especially if it's going to provide access to justice and due process to people. And so she's always inspired me, and along with Erika's inspiration, just really pushed us to go for it. And so I'm really grateful for that and all she does. So.
Thank you so much, Erin. And there is a question from Leslie, who says, if our organization wants to provide a contribution to help DACA recipients or applicants pay the $500 application fee, can we give that to the Center for Dreamers for you to give to those in need? Or if not, who should we give such donations to?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. We will certainly take that money. Yeah, as I mentioned, we're looking for ways to fund this fully, hopefully for all of the DACA recipients that are going to be participating. And we're not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but if there are folks who are willing to provide donations and support the DACA recipients. And that the other thing that I forgot to mention too is we're trying to do this over time. So we might do a cohort in December and then possibly another 2 cohorts next year. So we're hoping to have as many DACA recipients as possible and spread out throughout the state. We'll probably start here in Madison and then expand it out. And then also hopefully not just have the target group be those of Mexican origin. We're also hoping to have this for folks from other countries, because we're the largest group, but we're not the only group. And a lot of the times there is opportunities that are more afforded to those of us who are Mexican in origin, because such a high population. So Leslie, yes, if I sent my email, so you can email myself or Erin, and then we can stay in contact, or you or anybody else that would be willing to provide any donations for that program, because it's definitely not going to be cheap, but it's definitely going to be worth it.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. And the other thing I would add, through Fabiola Hamden, who works for the county and through at the Immigrant Affairs Office, and basically is just an angel. She they are able to often provide the filing fee for people with DACA who live in Dane County. So that's something also we want to continue to get that support from Joe Parisi in the county to ensure that people with DACA who financially are eligible, the hypothetical EPIC employee I was talking about probably could afford to pay to renew the DACA, but there's a lot of people with DACA who can't afford to pay the $500 every 2 years, or it's a hardship, a big hardship on them with all of the other uncertainties in their life. So the county has been very supportive, and we've been with Fabiola Hamden, we've been really grateful to have that collaboration. And so those are other things, just ways you can support the center by encouraging the city and the county to continue to support, because there are ways that they can do so that make a huge difference.
Thank you, Erin. I have a question. Erica, you had talked about not feeling like you belonged, and in high school not feeling supported, and just how that affected your self-esteem and just what you did. Do you have some thoughts on what would have been ways that the school, the community could have supported you? And sort of along with that, what kind of support in general the community can give to undocumented and DACA recipients?
Yeah, thank you, Len. So I graduated high school in 2000, which is a long time ago. Things with immigration looked very different back then. I'm sure for those of us that have been in the immigration sphere can attest to the fact that the conversations on immigration have just shifted over time and have become more open. In a good way, and sometimes in a good way, and not such a good way as well. But I think that people are becoming more aware of what everything means, what it means to be undocumented, and the lack of support that is often there for students. I think what it would have been really helpful for me then would have been if I knew that my teachers or counselors had some idea about what that meant, and that they would express that support, not just to me, because obviously you don't want to just assume that somebody's undocumented because of their color of their skin or their if they have an accent or whatnot. But if I would have seen a poster in my counselor's office where it said undocumented people are welcome here, or just something that was very explicit about that person being somewhat knowledgeable and supportive, I would have completely opened up to that person, probably with a whole bunch of fears still, but I think that I would have at least considered it. And even if I didn't have that conversation, I would have known inside that there were people out there that wanted to support me, even if I didn't come forward and open up. So that was in high school, and then I think in college, very similar. I have a feeling, I never actually asked my advisor, but I did a international studies program, and for that program, you were required to travel abroad. And I was like, well, I can't do that. I told my professor or my advisor that I was not able to do that, but because I had lived abroad for such a long period of time, she essentially said, you know what, you have the experience that essentially we want you to have when you travel abroad. So that's sufficient enough. I'm sure that you can write a very good paper, talk about that experience as you lived away, even if it was, during your childhood. So I think she knew I never asked her because I was also not very open about my status then, but just to have that support is what allowed me to graduate. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for being so open. Thank you. Other questions that people have?
I was just add something. Sorry, I keep talking.
Nope, that's
One other goal of the center is really to provide resources to administrators as well as high school counselors and things like that. Because one thing we assume what we know is these issues are complicated. I know that, and I'm entrenched in it on a daily basis. But really knowing, we want to encourage people to, if they have questions, if someone's applying and they're like, what is the status exactly? They can call us, and it's not, no judgment. It's only to provide information so that we can serve people, to ensure that educational equity. So that someone applies and they're like, oh, they have DACA, they can't go to school here. What we'd like them to do is call us first, because oftentimes they're just, you're scared and it's a lack of knowledge. And so we really want to serve as a resource for that as well, and are putting together some materials for UW in particular, and hoping to be able to provide that to additional educational institutions as well, because I think, and it's, kind of taking the guilt out of it. If you don't know, just ask. We're here. We're very nice. We're very approachable. We're just trying to, get the information out, and hopefully that, the word will spread. And so people will have more knowledge to empower them to serve everyone in an equitable manner for higher education.
Great. Thank you. I wonder if you can now, Erin and Erica, there's another, there's something in the chat that I'll read from Dan Zimmerman, who is saying that Dorit Bergen and Dan are co-coordinators for the Dane Sanctuary Coalition's volunteer driver program, which is a program to bring people who have an appointment with the ICE, I'm going to get this Immigration Service Office in Milwaukee or Waukegan, Illinois, for biometrics, security check, asylum, interview, etc., as well as to the Immigration Court in Chicago. And they provide rides for other necessary purposes, such as a trip to UW Hospital and clinics for treatment visits, or for whatever. And they're always looking for volunteers. So if anyone is listening and wants to volunteer, they're always looking for volunteers. And also if an individual needs a ride or help, Dan has put his information in the chat. So thank you, Dan, for that.
That's so great. They've helped some of my clients so far, and I'm so grateful for that. And it's a really powerful resource. I think
it's wonderful. And this is from Freddie. Is there any movement by the center or others to extend reduced tuition for DACA recipients, such as in-state tuition, to UW institutions or other Wisconsin colleges?
So Erika can add probably her personal experience to this, but we, Wisconsin has a unique history with in-state tuition for people who are undocumented. We're the only state that had it at a time and then don't have it, so that it was canceled. And right now we are doing a lot of research and trying to do some advocacy to move this in the right direction, because it really is someone who is undocumented or has DACA paying full tuition at something like UW-Madison is truly, it's impossible for most people. And there are some resources eligible, but it's not a very transparent process. And it has to come from specific private donations. Because of the state of the legislature in Wisconsin, UW is very careful about, they're always very careful about it, but the money, there's a limited amount of money that's available to provide scholarship to people with DACA and who are undocumented. So we really would love to move the needle on this, but it's difficult just given where we are in Wisconsin and what the legislature looks like and what they will support and won't support. But we're heavy on the research just to know what the facts are, what things could possibly be done, and who are the people we need to talk to. And so, hopefully continuing to reach out to the Board of Regents, as well as people in the legislature. Actually, on Thursday at noon, there's going to be a webinar about educational equity and tuition equity, where Erika, who is speaking? Is it Zamaripa?
Yes, it's Friday.
Yeah. Oh, it's Friday. Sorry, it's on Friday. Where they'll be discussing this more, and Erika will be presenting. So we can share that with you if you want to share it with the group as well.
Yes, thank you. That would be great.
And Erika, you might want to share your story or.
as Sarah mentioned, this is heavily politicized, unfortunately. And even if students would otherwise qualify for certain scholarships, unfortunately, when you have DACA and when you're undocumented, just the ability to get scholarships is highly reduced. So there's no in-state tuition, and then on top of that, if you want to get loans, almost impossible. And then if you want to apply for scholarships, it becomes extremely difficult. There's some national scholarships that allow DACA recipients to apply, but sometimes that depends on the field of the student. And then once you go up the ladder with graduate level degrees and doctorate, those become even narrower. So that just really highly limits the ability to have some monetary resources for students that otherwise would be able to go to school. And even those that have very high GPAs, because I've seen it with my own eyes, it's people that I know, and then also with my own experience. I was very fortunate that I was able to find a way when I came to the graduate school level. But as Erin mentioned, it's oftentimes through means that are not very transparent. And I also had professional development funds from my job. So, you have to find you have to scratch under every rock. And sometimes it's extremely tiring, and sometimes you just don't know where to go to. So we're hopeful with in-state tuition, but sometimes at least for me, I put that hope aside because it's been such a long time, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense other than the political aspect of this.
Are there other questions, other comments people have? Otherwise, I'm going to ask the two of you if you wouldn't mind talking about recent changes to immigration policy and the challenges that are out there now. And I know, Erin, you've talked to us about some of this in the past, but it always changes. And so we'd appreciate that kind of update and what the challenges are now.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a big topic. So, and things are moving all the time, and there's, sometimes we have hope and sometimes we just feel stagnant. And so I can fill you in on a few things that I have been following and been involved in, and then Erika might have some more from her perspective. But the southern border remains closed under Title 42. And so mostly what that means is people, well, it means a lot of things, but one major issue is that people are still not really eligible to apply for asylum, which I think violates our domestic laws as well as our international laws. There are some exceptions, including unaccompanied children. They are able to process, but many of them will be detained before being united with families at Fort Bliss in Texas. We've done some work there. Hopefully that will be closing soon, but we don't know for sure at this point. And their immigration courts are more backlogged than they ever have been. So people who are even in the United States and eligible to apply for relief are waiting years and years and years. Detained courts remain open. So people who are in detention and applying for relief or facing deportation, those are moving forward. But people who are not in detention, who may be seeking asylum or getting their green card through a judge, they're waiting longer than they ever have, and the backlog just continues to grow. One other area, which we're probably all pretty familiar with the Afghans being housed at Fort McCoy near Sparta, Wisconsin. I think this is public. I hope it is. The Fort McCoy should be, everyone should be resettled in the next month or two. That means that there will be hundreds of people from Afghanistan resettled in Wisconsin. And what we know is there's a huge lack of representation available, pro bono representation or low cost representation to people who are seeking asylum, even before the people from Afghanistan arrived. And so all of these, most of the people from Afghanistan will be applying for asylum. It will be what's called an affirmative process. So they're not going in front of an immigration judge, but it's still an incredibly complicated process. And many advocates in Wisconsin are attempting to find funding to create additional, mostly attorneys that will be able to serve this population, as well as people seeking asylum as well. So, I mean, I could talk and talk and talk, but I will kind of stop there. And if people have questions, or if Erika, there's more you want to add, and I'm missing a million things. There's so much going on, but those were kind of the I don't know if you call them highlights, but.
The only thing that I wanted to add was the advanced parole application process, how that, and also the Daca Renewals. The Daca Renewals keep the processing time keeps shifting, and I know that Aaron and I have been contacted by folks who have, unfortunately, they have not received a response, even though they're employed, and so they have been. There's been a lot of unfortunate situations with that. And then also with the advanced parole processing. The advanced parole processing is, when I applied, it was taking about 6 to 9 months for an approval. And now it is between 9 and 13 months. So that timeline is getting a little scary just because it's such a long time. So yeah, those were the only two things that I wanted to add there.
Could you talk a little bit about the Remain in Mexico policy?
Sure. Forgot about that. Not really, I didn't forget about it, but it's just one other issue. So the Biden administration attempted to cancel the Remain in Mexico program, but then a federal judge said that they didn't they violated the Administrative Procedure Act in the cancellation. And so they were forced to reopen it, meaning not only is the southern border closed under Title 42, but additionally, people who would be eligible for asylum, who are presenting themselves on the southern border, are now going to be forced to remain in Mexico during the pendency of their asylum case, which can be years. And during a pandemic, can be very, it's been demonstrated to be incredibly dangerous for these families. They're targets to gangs and narcotraficantes and other criminal organizations, because it's very easy to often identify who these people are. And especially once they have to show up at a port of entry to go to court, and then they're brought back later that evening in a truck driven with the ICE, with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, on the van. So Biden still seems to say he's going to cancel it. They just have to figure out how to do that in the correct way. But it's complicated. And it's terrifying that it's happening again.
I also had a question about that the Afghans who are applying for asylum. I was thinking most of that at least some of them are coming as refugees, but they still need to apply for asylum. Or can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's a really complicated process. But normally when someone comes to the United States and they're resettled here as a refugee, they become refugees outside of the United States, deemed by the UN. But because of the evacuation process, we brought people into the United States who maybe would qualify as technically refugees, but because they weren't deemed refugees by the United Nations outside of the United States, now they're here. We're admitted in something called Humanitarian Parole, which is valid for 2 years, but is not a pathway to citizenship. So when I originally heard about everybody coming, being evacuated, we heard a lot about the special immigrant visa, that many of them would just be coming here and have their special immigrant visas and then be on a expedited pathway to citizenship. So they helped the US government or the military in some substantial way, have the support of their supervisor and things like that. But what we learned very quickly is most of the people do not qualify for SIV, or they left before the process had completed. And so the only thing they're left with is to apply for asylum. And, as I said, the court is a huge backlog. People from Afghanistan who are applying generally need to apply within the first year of arriving. And with this number of people, it can be very difficult for people to meet those deadlines. They may extend that to 2 years to the extent of the advanced parole process. But the government has also announced that they will be going through an expedited asylum process. So if they apply for asylum, they'll have their asylum interview rather quickly, and then we'll have the decision within the year of application, which you're like, that doesn't sound quick, but in immigration world, that's very quick. And so that's why I kind of mentioned before the kind of dire need for legal services for people from Afghanistan. Well, many of them do have there'll be a number of them that have kind of textbook asylum, political, or based on their status of being a woman, or it's still not easy. There's nothing easy within immigration and navigating this system after such a traumatic evacuation and leaving your life behind and being fearful of being returned. I think there's a disservice we've had. And so I'm hoping we can, as a community, as people, we can really step up to ensure people have access to justice in the situation.
Other questions that people have about either the presentation or about immigration policies, challenges, just other questions or comments that people have? All right, if not, maybe we will move on to our brainstorming session with Bonnie to talk about possible educational and action steps going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Thank you, Erin and Erica, so much for this presentation and for the work that the two of you are doing. It's really amazing and inspiring, and we're so grateful for your sharing with us tonight, and also for the really important update on what's going on with immigration. I know it is incredibly complicated, and you did a fabulous job of explaining very complicated stuff. So we wanted to take just a little bit of time tonight. We have folks here tonight who are from Temple Beth El, and we also have folks here from other Dane Sanctuary Coalition congregations. I do want to announce first and foremost, and please put this on your calendars, March 13th, which is a Sunday, from 6:30 until 8 p.m. on Zoom. We are going to have a coalition-wide meeting. We haven't had one in a while. Erin and Erica are going to come back and talk briefly about the Center for Dreamers for those Dane Sanctuary Coalition members who weren't able to be here tonight. We are putting together a panel from our other immigration justice partners in Dane County to hear from them about their work and opportunities for us as a Sanctuary Coalition to be supportive, and an opportunity for all of you from our Dane Sanctuary Coalition congregations and organizations to share what you worked on in 2021, what you're hoping to do in 2022, to share ideas and opportunities for involvement and engagement. So again, March 13th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Please put on your calendars. We will be sending out save the date and registration information by the first week of February. So you all have a sneak preview. So I'm going to share my screen and just put a blank document up and give you all an opportunity just to unmute yourselves and just do some brainstorming, just throw out ideas for us of things that you would like to see either all of us as a Dane Sanctuary Coalition engage in the coming year, or ideas for your own congregations and organizations. And I'm going to start out because one thing that I heard about right away was fundraise for Daca recipients and for the Dreamers Center. Lynn, you're
Yep.
muted.
I wanted to bring up that there's planned a big view coming up. It's a Netflix series called Living Undocumented. It's a series of 6, it's documentary really, of families who have come to the US from various countries who are undocumented. It's excellent. I've watched the first 3 and they're very moving. I'd highly, highly recommend them. And we're going to be organizing groups to discuss them. You know, again, they're very moving. It really puts a very human face on what it's like to live undocumented. So that will be coming up.
Thank you. Other thoughts people have, either things that are coming up in your congregations or things that you wish that were coming up in your congregations, or ideas that you got tonight, or things that you would like to see the Dane Sanctuary Coalition or your congregation get involved in? So one thing that you're going to be hearing more of from the Dane Sanctuary Steering Committee sometime in the next several months, I can't guarantee exactly when, but we are working on a housing proposal for asylum seekers. So we are investigating a number of different models and hope to have a proposal for the coalition, probably not in time for the March meeting, but perhaps in time for a summer meeting. It has happened many times in the last several years that Fabiola or Aisa from Silk or somebody, one of the other immigration attorneys that we work with, has called and said, we have somebody, they're leaving detention, they got their bond paid and they're leaving detention and they have no place to go. And so we scramble to find a hotel or home hospitality or some kind of temporary or long-term housing for the person leaving detention. And so the Dane Sanctuary Steering Committee is looking at different models for a less emergency-based solution to this ongoing situation. And so again, we hope to have something to propose sometime in the next several months.
And what about doing some kind of fundraising to help with the asylum process for the Afghan refugees?
Yes, thank you. That also is a very expensive process to apply for humanitarian parole and to have somebody apply to sponsor you costs $575. So that's also something that is an important fundraising possibility. Thank you.
There was a question in the chat. Is it possible, this is from Marsha, is it possible to train citizen advocates to help people applying for asylum, or are attorneys necessary in the process?
This is Erika. I believe Erin had to go to take care of her kiddos. So is it okay if I ask her that question and I can email it to you all?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will pass that over to her. And then as far as the need or interest for volunteers, that would be great. We don't know exactly in which way we would utilize folks at the moment, but I'm sure we're gonna have specific needs as we continue to the work, especially when it comes to certain things, like if we do this advanced parole program, I'm sure that we're gonna need some help. So if you all have a list, or if we can contact you all with that, that would be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, please. So the Dane Sanctuary Coalition has an e-newsletter that we send out periodically, and we would be thrilled to include any information about the Center for Dreamers, volunteer needs, any requests that you have. We will put out in our e-news to share.
Okay, that is great.
Thank you. I see Fabiola has her hand up.
Right. So I was really trying hard not to talk,
No, go
but
ahead.
I think it's just, first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much, Erica and Aaron. I think these kind of initiatives are very needed. And one thing that you forgot to mention is that for the Daca renewals that are happening right now, and you mentioned our office usually helps with the filing fees, but we are seeing that private attorneys or other institutions are charging between $1,000 to $1,500 for the renewal, which our office can find pro bono attorneys, and they don't have to pay that. So that's huge. I think it's very important that we take into consideration that a nonprofit agencies like Centro Hispano and other agencies that are nonprofit and have immigration services are offering this type of assistance. And the one thing that I wanted to say, Dan is here. The volunteer driving efforts you guys put is amazing. I think about end of December, we had this family coming from Lebanon, and a family of 5, and we didn't know how to get them. At that time, unfortunately, I had COVID and I couldn't move from my house. And my option was to call Dan, and he put together about three vehicles that went and pick up this family. It is just it's amazing. Thank you so much for that effort. And it's not only the ride that you provide, it's the welcoming, and it's the making community that we all call, because this is what it is. It's not just a service, but you make people feel welcome. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. And lastly, I have to say, we have this community crisis, asylum seekers. And every day, almost, our office receives calls and visits from asylum seekers that are in need of immigration assistance, and we don't know where to send them. We right now work with Silk to give them information. Other than that, to hire an immigration attorney or any legal services is expensive. It's lengthy. The backlogs are, you heard from Aaron, and it is a community crisis, because we just had a call not too long ago, a family of 5. They staying with a friend for a couple of days. They have to be, they have 180 days to present themselves in the USCIS. Not only that, but when they come, they don't have work permit, right? So it's, they cannot work, and they don't have a stable housing. All of that is adding up, and we really need, I hope that we all think about asylum seekers a little bit different than the Afghan refugees that they were airlifted, and here locally we have US social services and all of that. But for these families that are coming with nothing, it's really, it's worrisome. So just think about that, and thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fabiola, and thank you so much for the work that you do. I know that you are busy day and night, and you do amazing things. And And yes, I do want to thank Dan Zimmerman from Temple Bethel and Dorit Bergen from First Unitarian Society, who together co-lead our volunteer driver program, and they are tireless in responding really quickly to requests that often come kind of last minute for rides, and they are fabulous in finding rides for people on short notice. Other thoughts that people have? We're going to be sharing this with the Dane Sanctuary Steering Committee and looking at ways that as a coalition we can address some of these needs, and we'll be talking about some of these things again at our March 13th meeting. And we have a few minutes if anybody has any last minute thoughts they want to throw out.
You know, maybe another thing to add to your list is we've been trying to get our congregation members interested in volunteering with Open Doors for Refugees, with all their helping with move in and setting up housing and stuff like that, and can give people a real window into what those people's lives are like and their struggles.
Thank you, Mary. Other thoughts? Lynn, can you see if anybody has their hand up? I can't see everybody.
Let's see. I am not seeing anyone else. I'm not seeing anyone else. Yeah, I did want to just, along with the volunteering with Open Doors for Refugees, there's always a need. One of the needs is to help people navigate the bus system and, you know, go with people to doctor's visits or whatever, and really help people learn the bus system. So that's in terms of a specific need that I know is there for the immigrants who are here and and the people from Afghanistan as well.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else. If you do end up having thoughts or questions, certainly feel free to contact Bonnie or myself. I can write my email in the chat. I did want to thank our presenters so much. It was just a wonderful presentation. I think they may have had to leave. And thank you for all the participants. Fabiola, I appreciate you speaking up too. Really good information for all of us. I'll just put my information in the chat. Okay. If there is nothing else, I think we can sign off.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you on March 13th.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
That went well.
Yeah, I think that went really well. the flow, kept flowing, and yeah, the presentations were good, the questions were good, so yeah.
And we don't have any information on who live streams, do we?
What do you,
Who
we
is-
can see how many people watched,
But we
but
don't.
we can't
know.
see identity. There is Stephanie or Kendra, whoever has access, can go and look deeper into analytics about like where people were watching from, like not specifically like, I don't know, in the greater geographic world where people are from, and things like that, but
No.
it can't tell you like who they were.
The real-
But yeah,
Oh.
but it should, once it's up on YouTube, it stays there forever. So people can watch it later on. And we can link the YouTube to the Dane Sanctuary Facebook page and Beth L's Facebook page and anybody else that we want. But I want to ask Stephanie if we can edit out the dead air at the beginning before we post it anywhere.
Right, that's a good idea. Okay.
But yeah, it was great.
Good job, you guys, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I hope Erica feels better soon.
right.
Yeah, it didn't sound nice at all.
No.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
All right, good night.
Thank you both. Good night.
Okay. Oh, just one thing, Bonnie, will you be, I forgot what you said about sharing the list.
So we're going to share it with the steering committee, which is meeting, we meet the second Friday of every month. I'll share it with you all.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people were from, throughout ideas from Bethel. I knew some, I recognize some of the voices and they weren't Bethel people, but it doesn't matter. So I'll share the list with you all for your own internal conversation, and I'll share it with the steering committee so we can talk about, what do we want to do, if anything, with any of these ideas.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Take care.
Thank you both.
Bye.
Bye.